Good morning, everyone, or almost afternoon. We're here for the Idea Lab Growth Intentions call for Friday, October 28th already. I can't believe it's the end of October. The book I picked for today, a very relevant topic. It's come up in conversation numerous times over the past month or so. So I thought it was perfect. The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. It's really a story. It's a fable about a man and about what it was like to be a giver instead of a receiver. And that meant, what does it look like to go out into community and be the connector, be the giver, be of service to other people? Has anyone read the book? Awesome. What are your takeaways from the book?
Well, I read, not only read it maybe a year or so ago, but I just finished reading The Go-Giver Sells More, which is another follow-up of his. And the biggest takeaway to me, in just a few words, it's about them. It's not about you. And when you really understand that concept, you can be a lot more successful, because so many people selling, of course, it was talking about, but in general, so many people make it about me. And the go-giver, I guess it's giving, and at some point you're going to get it back. But I just find it fascinating. It reminded me of a module I do in my talks about listening, about how many people you're telling them something. And I just went to Hawaii and they immediately interject. Well, I went to Hawaii. I was there a month or so, and we're not talking about you. We're still talking about me or the person. And so the whole idea was, if you make it about them, you will be much more successful.
How about you, Charlie?
I'm very familiar with the book. I've interviewed Bob Burg. I've been interviewed by Bob Burg.
Oh, you have to share that with us.
Well, it's a private matter. Let me do something real quick here.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. So if we look over here, what's that bucket that's sitting back there on the credenza?
Oh, look at that.
Okay. So I give a copy of that to every one of my clients. And I said, this is how you be successful in life. And people will read it, and it's a litmus test. A gentleman was referred to me. He was an insurance salesman, and a mutual acquaintance referred him to me. He and I met. He sat in that chair over there. We had a nice conversation. At the end, I handed him a book. I said, do me a favor, read this over the weekend and tell me what you think. So he was back in my office on Tuesday. He sat here, and I said, well, did you like the book? And he said, I cried. I said, excuse me? He said, what do you mean? He said, I've been doing it all wrong. I'm a taker. And this made me realize that in order to get, I have to give.
Wow.
And I haven't been doing that. It transformed his life, and he became such an evangelist for this particular book. And for Bob, he developed a relationship with Bob. He had Bob on his TV show and things of that particular nature. But it basically says we have to think, how can I help them first before I help myself? Because nothing's going to come back to us unless they know we care about them. And when we really listen and we really go down deep and we hear what they're saying, we feel what's going on, they sense that too. And they know that we are very interested in them because we're sharing our wisdom. Professional service providers, that's what we all are. We have to educate people. We have to give them the 20% that Google can't give them. And that helps them make better decisions. That helps them grow. By giving away our IP, they're never going to know everything we do, but they have to sense that what we have is something that they need. And if we keep it to ourselves and we don't give it away, nothing's going to come back our way. So you think about people in your life that have touched your heart. They've given you something, whether it's a hug, whether it's money, whether it's friendship, whatever it might be. They touched you in the heart. And that's at the key of this particular book. And what happens is you want to surround yourself with people like that. because they're not expecting anything in return whatsoever. And David, if you want to talk about how that relates to selling, that would be a helpful segue too.
Yeah, it was actually, I was thinking, I had a talk for Boeing last week or week before, and I offered some consultations. And so I had one of them, I have a few scheduled, but I had one a couple days ago. And this is sort of the go-giver with selling, but also prosperous coaching by Rich Littman and what's his Steve Chandler, whatever his name is, where it's so counterintuitive to what you think, because I'm helping her. It's a half-hour consultation. And I give her, here's some really great ideas to use, and here's a technique you could do, and so on and so forth. And she goes, well, our time is almost such. How can I work with you? And I said, well, let's hold on. Let's just take this. Let's make another appointment. How much time do you think you need for these sort of exercises? I actually felt like a little bit of a marriage counselor, because she was talking about her husband too. And he was very negative. She was very positive. So I gave her these 2 or 3 exercises. Well, give me 2 weeks. I said, okay, so let's make another one. But it was kind of back to the prosperous coach, because that's counterintuitive to what, well, here, do you have your bank card handy? Let's go ahead and get it out here and make the sale. And so that's kind of what a lot of what the go-giver sells more is about. If you continually make it about them, even though it's against your logical thinking, you'll actually do better. And that's again, and that's why I think it applies not only in selling. He had another one too, the go-giver sells more. There was another version of it besides the original one. And he talks about Pintar from the original book and so forth. But it's just such a cool concept, and it's hard to get across because we're taught to, close the sale. It was like, I remember at Nordstrom for so many times. Well, Charlie, should I get the tailor? Should I go ahead and grab the tailor and have him mark up the suit? It's like, close that dang sale, and so it's, but in the long run, it works better. That's what I got from it.
Well, there are different ways of selling. There's transactional, which I think you just referred to, David. There's consultative, where you figure out what the problem is. And there's the other one where you build a relationship first.
Yeah.
And then figure out, can I be of service, or can somebody in my network be of service, right? Unless you develop that relationship, it's not going to happen. And, God bless you, David, that the woman reached out and wanted to grab you and said, let's work together. That's wonderful. Doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it takes multiple contacts for people to really feel that you're the right fit for them, and it's that relationship. And, when you're giving, that's the ultimate in being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up to give something of yourself. And that resonates with some people. Other people see this as a weakness and they're going to take advantage of you. Well, you don't want them in your world anyway. So it's a good way of figuring out who I'm going to hang out with, who I'm not going to hang out with. So, and this is a credit to Suzanne. She attracts certain kinds of people because she's a naturally giving person. And when I first met her, people were taking advantage of that. They weren't giving back to her. And now she's found a way to have people return the favor and have people reciprocate without her asking them to reciprocate. And that's what it's all about. So I'm going to send you all a series of papers that I've written or I've found that deal with the go-giver concept. And David, I have a training on selling the go-giver way that I give on that. And I know I'm giving it coming up soon. I forget what date. I think it's November, December. I'll be happy to get you an invite to that if you want to just
please share. Feel free to share that in the community as well. I know.
It's to a church group in Dallas, so I don't know whether they'll want outsiders. But I said, you're in a conversion business, aren't you? Yeah, of course. Yeah. So
I think
we'll talk you into doing that training for us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
The key word, Charlie, you just mentioned is relationship. And there's the old line about the average salesman, it takes 4 calls to make a sale, but the average salesman gets discouraged at 2 calls. And I think that I look at some of the people I've transacted with, and sure enough, it's been 3 or 4 or 5 times where you've built a relationship first. And I think back, I used to use this a lot in my life about, I've dated a lot of women in my life. And I look at the ones that work the best, where you develop the relationship. And it was the coffee and the discussion and the walk and all that kind of stuff. You really got to know the person, and then you end up dating. It was so much better. And what is that again? It's the relationship. It's building the relationship. And, that's why so many people, they they go about it the wrong way. And then at some point the kids leave the home and they don't even like each other, or whatever the example is, so.
Yeah, there's, when he wrote the book, it was a philosophy that he had, and then he got a ghostwriter who's written all of his books with him, John David Mann, and who's coming out with a new book called The Go-Giver Marriage, or something like, just came out on that particular subject, about marital relationships.
Yeah.
A graduate student at University of Pennsylvania Wharton School took the book into class, and he showed his professor this book, and he said, "This is a fantastic tale, but there's no evidence that this is true." So the professor said, "Well, why don't you do some research on that?" He came back very quickly and said, "There's a lot of research on this." He said, "Fine, let's work on this." The book is called Give and Take, written by Adam Grant at the University of Pennsylvania. It put him on the map as a person of interest, got him tons of speaking engagements, et cetera. But he says there's basically three kinds of people. They're giver takers and something called matchers. Now, the difference between a giver and a taker is they both do very well in life. The conventional thinking is givers lose to takers. Not necessarily. The research says it's the same. But the giver always has more people at the funeral than the taker. But the giver's not around to see that. Anyway, the matcher is the person that we really dislike. So this is a person that, for example, Heather, you would think, "Oh, what a nice person. They're very helpful, et cetera, until they turn around and say, "I helped you, Heather. I need you to help me now." Right? So I lent you $10. I need 30. Come on, you're not going to deprive me. I need 30 now. You say, "Wait a minute, this is unfair." That's called a matcher. And they're out there, and we meet these people, and we want to stay away from them. So as we're building community, what's community mean to you? Anyway, as we're building community, we want community to have people have similar values and outlooks on life, et cetera. And what David's talking about is a way of viewing life. It's a value. What do I value? Relationships versus transactions. Because guess what? Relationships will keep bringing you clients. Transactions won't. That's what I've learned from it. So I'll send that information out to you. Heather, I don't have your contact information. If you put it in the chat, I'll grab it and I'll send you the information. So I just hijacked what you were saying, Suzanne.
No, I fully agree with everything that you're saying. I feel like the awarenesses around these concepts, and there's some rules in the book, right, that the story covers. As I grew my awarenesses about, a coach said to me one time about astonishing people with value that you bring, that it's not necessarily about the modules or the bonuses or tangible things that you're going to give people, but more astonishing them with the value behind it. So literally your coaching program could just be time with you, but you're giving them so much value that they're like, wow, this was really incredible, and making people feel like that. From a simple basket of bread on your table at a restaurant that's amazing bread, to a coaching relationship that, you paid for one session a month, and you actually have the coach's phone number, and they call you when you have a question. That's astonishing them with value.
That's it. Yep.
How about you, Heather? Any insights?
Yeah, I think I read Give and Take. I haven't read The Go-Giver. And I followed Adam. I was actually really angry the whole time at Give and Take because every example was a male. And I didn't think he did a great job of dealing with gender at all. That said, shortly thereafter, I think within a year or two, his colleagues all pushed him into having to deal with the gender question. So I am pro Adam Grant, but you must read Give and Take with a grain of salt and get through all of the examples of the white guy hero. I mean, it's all over the place. So I got a lot of weird looks on my morning walk because I audiobooked it. And I was like, another crappy example. But I think there's a really important element. And so kind of pull, I'm going to add the gender element from my own limited, unprofessional, like I don't do gender studies.
Mhm.
But in Give and Take, he talks about the people at the bottom oftentimes are a type of giver. And I don't remember the language. If either of you gentlemen remember the language, or I don't know, Suzanne, if you've read it, but there's
It's
two
been a
different types
while.
of giving. There's like the giving in order to earn approval, and the giving out of a place of generosity. And when you're in this place of approval, you've automatically put yourself lower on the hierarchy. Please love me, please appreciate me. I'm going to do everything for you. I'm going to sacrifice myself for you. Well, guess how women are socialized? Exactly like take care of everyone around you. It's your job. Like baseline is you taking care of everyone around you. So that's how most women are socialized. And I'm sure some men have been socialized that way.
Yeah.
So women are predisposed to be in this just crap part where you're the doormat, right? And
yes, like please, 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 let me please you, let me please you, let me please you.
Where it's so different. And when you come from a place of generosity, you're coming from a place of confidence, a place of abundance. I have extra time for you, you know, and I think that when you're in that place of generosity, sometimes you say no, or you set the limits, right? So that becomes a bit of a power dynamic because you're the giver and the other person is the receiver, and they have the need and you have what they want, or you can surprise them with extra, whatever, but you're coming from this place of abundance and confidence and all of that. And I think it's really important for women when they're in this place of, I should give more, like, what kind of giving are you doing? Are you like, you've just worked a 10-hour day and you're like minutes from tears and you're like, I better give this person my personal phone number so they, you know, he's like, no. Like, where are your own boundaries? If you're not coming from a place of abundance, you have work to do here before you over deliver. Or you have to be careful how you over deliver. If it's one of the things that's going to make you successful, you've got to balance it. So I think for anybody, but especially for women, number one, where are you coming from? Is it the place of lack and like the bottom of the barrel asking for something? And number two, if you're going to be exceedingly generous, make sure it's not to the point where you sacrifice yourself, right? Generosity is I have extra, not I'm going to just tear off a piece of my soul and throw it at you. It's got to be that different kind of giving. And I don't think we give people permission to like take a break and to rest. That's what I'm seeing everywhere. It's like, I've got to give more. And I, want to find that place. I want people to find that place of abundance so that the giving is fun, not I've got to do this to get ahead.
Yeah. I love that energy distinction. That just the energy can be different, like the energy of giving from pleasing someone and eventually receiving something back from them, or giving out of generosity and abundance. And of course I have either time or a resource for you. Charley,
and there's joy in service. I mean, sometimes we're refilling our bucket by the giving, but there has to be that balance in there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Heather, I've had many women in my life, a daughter, a wife, and many other people. And a lot of times the giving is designed to get acknowledgement, appreciation, like me, I'm doing things, and that always backfires, as you were suggesting, because it's not, the intention is wrong, and I agree with you. If that's why you're doing it, something's missing inside here. And you think by bending over backwards and accommodating other people, that's going to fill you up. It's not going to fill you up. You got to be.
Oftentimes women don't give to be liked. They give because it's the default setting. And they give things that other people aren't asking for. And that's where I think the energy problem comes in, because there's plenty of women who overgive based on their energy level, who feel confident about themselves. I see it myself all the time, right? It's like, check into what your default setting is and how hard are you working for people who are not taking what you're giving? Like it's like, I don't need this, right? And you want when you're giving, you want to be, like you all said that connection, right? What does this person really want? So kicking out of that default setting of doing for, I mean, sometimes we give to the point that it disables somebody else because they never have to fight a battle, make a decision, do whatever, right? Because that default setting just overrides. I can do it. I'm capable of doing it. I'm going to do it. Not what's the best thing for this person in the moment, for this relationship in the moment, right? That nuance, I think, is really important. So becoming aware, gender aside, becoming aware of what your default giving setting is, and making a conscious choice to shift it or embrace it or wherever you want to be, I think is really important, because I see so many women give not for approval, but just because of that default setting. And I see plenty of people giving for approval as well, of course.
Would you give me share rights to the screen, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah, go ahead.
This is what you were referring to. These are the 5 laws that
Yes.
are in the Go
Thank
Giver
you.
book. There you go.
Yes. So that law of value is about the astonishment, and the law of compensation is basically that your income is determined by how many people that you're actually serving and giving to. Maybe that's why I enjoy giving to groups of people so much, because I don't know, I had an event yesterday, a networking event, and just watching the connections, the people who were in breakout rooms that had never met, that I thought, well, how could they not have met? Like, that brings me joy. So leaning into groups, it's supposed to increase your income. That's not why I do it, though. I do it because it brings me joy. I'd love to talk about the law of influence and how that works with you. You know, as a coach, as a mentor, as a parent, even, how does that social capital, you know, what you put out there has to interest you, right? Like I said, you know, facilitating groups interests me. I love seeing the connections in the room. That influence that I can have, you know, or social credit, so to speak, being in front of the room, adds to my authority, adds to the amount of people that I am able to give to. And it also increases the number of people who know what I do. Kind of like David has a podcast, and it increases the number of people who knows what he does. Just the email that he sends out every Monday. It's a touch for people to remind them of what David does. What's your take on that? I would love. Putting other people's interests first.
Well, when this workshop's from 2012 or 26, what is up there? It says 416. So this is many years ago, but the people in the audience are not the target. It's the people they know, right? So if I share what I have to share with them, my insights, my ideas, my concepts, something that's actionable, right? And I have an impact on them and I help them move forward. Well, they've had the Charley experience. And then when they have people in their world that may need that, they're going to refer them to me, right?
Yeah.
So again, it has to do with intention. My intention is they're not a prospect. They need to be aware of me so they can spread the word as to what this guy's doing and how this guy may help. My latest client happened that way. It just happened that way. Somebody watched my latest speaking engagement came that way. Somebody was in a workshop 3 weeks ago, called me up. We had a conversation, introduced me to somebody who hired me for a speaking engagement.
Wow.
Go figure. But I gave this training for free, right? With, you know, I just do it to get the word out there because again, people are looking for insights and ideas to help move them forward. And that's what I do, right? And some people say to me, you should be charging for that. I said, I think if I charge for it, nobody would come. So you give it away. And then all of a sudden it comes back to you in many, many different ways. That's just my philosophy. Now, I always wasn't that way. I was always stealing everybody else's ideas and I was selfish and I was not giving back and I was very much just about me. That didn't work out very well for me. And then something hit me between the eyes, and I said, I got to do something about this.
Mm.
And I figured out what it was, and I did it, and it changed me. And this book was, when I work with people, there's an exercise I give them, 7 pivotal events in your life. And when I told my story, this was one of them, reading this particular book. Because it suddenly said, wait a minute, I'm deep inside, I'm this person,
Yeah.
but I'm behaving in accordance with the way I think other people want me to behave. That's not working out well. Let me get back in touch with who I am so that I can be the authentic person that I am.
Do you remember what kind of slapped you in the back of the head and made you realize that was a particular person, incident?
So somebody gave me a copy of the book,
Mm.
and I read the book, and then all of a sudden certain things began to fall in place. We've all had it,
Mhm.
moments like that in our lives, or suddenly, it's always been in front of us, we can't see it, and all of a sudden something triggers it. And that's what happened for me, right? And I've been a different person ever since. So not a different person, but my behavior is different, the way I approach it is different, and that person was always in there, but I was always trying to be somebody else, and I was giving to the wrong people that didn't appreciate it, people that didn't embrace what I was trying to get across. I just had to find my tribe, and my tribe responded well. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the moment that I got angry with someone years ago because I had referred, at least 8 to 12 people to this person. She was a massage therapist, Reiki professional, and I was a nutritionist. So there's definitely some, correlation to what we were doing at the time, almost 15 years ago. And I thought she was wonderful. I thought she thought I was wonderful. And I thought by referring, 12 clients to her that I would receive 12 clients back. And I remember I referred to her because I thought she was great at what she did. But when I wasn't receiving anything back, I found myself getting angry about it. Like, well, I don't understand how this works then. And that made me dive deeper into the whole networking and giving mindset. And I can't remember when I found this book, but it was, I kind of realized, I'm more of a matcher here. I'm expecting, tit for tat. I'm expecting, I give you 12, you better give me 12. How come I'm not receiving? And it was a huge awareness for me that giving to her because I thought she was wonderful could actually mean that I received from somewhere else instead of me thinking it was an exchange type thing. And it really made some deeper work on my part.
In the book Give and Take, as Heather knows, he talks about 3 types of people. I found this 4th one when I did some research, called the exchanger. That's a quid pro quo. Hey, David, I'll do this for you if you do that for me. It's pre-agreed. So what really upsets you
different.
is
Pre-agreed is different than
what happened
expectations.
Is you acted in your mind that if I do this, she will then reciprocate. You didn't have that agreement, so therefore you got disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
But now if I want an exchange, then I have to get the other person to agree to it.
Yes.
So,
what's interesting to me is that certain things when you've been on the planet as long as Charley and I have been on the planet, well, I don't know, I guess it doesn't matter, but just things will just hit in your memory and you'll pull out something that hits you like a ton of bricks. And I think about relationships I've had when you talk about quid pro quo and girlfriends, wives, whatever. And I fought this battle my whole life. When I say I love you, I expect an I love you back. And somebody one day said to me, they say, if you say I love you and you're expecting an I love you back, then you're not saying it for the right reasons. And I just kind of stopped
it.
and I went, that's a
kinda
pretty
interesting.
damn good point.
It's like,
Mhm.
yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So Heather, I listen to Adam frequently on his different podcasts, and he's changed. He's had some very
Absolutely.
powerful women put him in his place. And
He
so
wrote an amazing article talking about I thought it was beautiful because he talked, it's basically who writes a giant article that says I was wrong, right? Like it's beautifully done. He talked about how he had to be strong-armed into it. He talked about his resistance to it. He talked about how it ended up being a total bias for him. It was fantastic. Like I was like done with Adam Grant, and then I ran into that article and was like, oh, okay, I can have him back. This is
yeah,
fabulous.
yeah.
He did a
Well,
beautiful job of making that transition.
his latest podcast is called Rethinking, meaning
Yeah.
going back to some things that really were evidence-based beliefs that he had that he's rethought totally, and he's really passionate about, and he's bringing some contrarian thinkers onto the broadcast to really open up his thinking as well as the thinking of his audience. So, you know, again, there's hope for these men. There's hope for them. So anyway,
I love that. I'll have to check that one out.
Yep.
Let's talk now about authenticity, which is that fourth law that was mentioned. The most important thing you can give or that you can offer someone else is yourself. It's not necessarily a tangible package or thing or gift even. It's really that gift of time and who you are as a person. And I want to just say that yes, and yes, that has been my finding 110% of the time. Even in my previous career, I remember one relationship in particular when I was a dental hygienist. He was a heart surgeon, and he was always my last patient at nighttime, 8 o'clock at night. And he would come in and get his teeth cleaned every 3 months, 4 months. And that spot was his, on Tuesday night, every 4 months. And he would be 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes late because he was in surgery all day or for whatever reason. And everybody that I worked with would leave. They would like, 10 minutes late, I'm out of here, I'm going home. And I always waited for him, no receptionist. The dentist would go home, and I had this knowledge of his career that I was willing to overlook the being a few minutes late to be of service to him with no intention in mind. I had no idea I was going to become a coach and doing wellness programs for medical and dental offices later. But he turned out to be my biggest referral source when I first started my business. Why? Because he felt like he actually knew that I gave a shit about him and his job and his life and his teeth and all of that good stuff. And
right.
It was pretty good lesson for me now looking back on it. I didn't do it obviously to receive referrals because I didn't even know what I was going to be doing in the future,
But that's the law of authenticity. You were being Suzanne.
Yeah.
You didn't have to think about it. You were just being yourself. And so the way, when somebody asks you to sit down and talk to them, they have a problem, and you just sit there and you be yourself and you try not to impose your thinking, your mindset, your outlook. You just listen to people. That's the best thing that you can do, is do that. And in the Go Giver, there's example after example of that behavior being demonstrated, et cetera. I mean, when have a client in front of you, if your intention is to have them become a client, you may not be listening to them. You may not be showing up. It's about them. It's about getting them to come to the realization that they have an issue that maybe you can help them with. And if you're trying to be something other than yourself to get them to engineer them to a close, You're not being
Mhm.
yourself. So that's why, people, like, I'm a recovering salesperson, right? So
Mhm.
I've had to deprogram myself from all of these things that I learned to do. And sometimes it's difficult, you smell blood, you see the goal line, right? And I have to pull back, and I have to pull back, because deep down inside, I don't want that happening to me. But I
Mhm.
was a trained killer, and I was good. But that's not the world that I'm in today. I'm not in a transactional world. I'm in a world
Yeah.
of relationships, and I have to adjust accordingly. So that's why the Go Giver was so uh, helpful, because it caused me to realize that this was part of who I am, that I had not allowed to show up. And that transformation doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. I'm still recovering.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's because it resonates. It goes so nicely with the prosperous coach method of thinking about coaching.
Yep.
I think it mirrors it very nicely and goes right along with that whole philosophy of, having conversations with people and getting to know people on a deeper level. That has served me in my practice better than any sales technique or any sales page or any you know method of selling somebody something. I think it's much more satisfying to spend time with someone and have them say, like David mentioned, how do I work with you? That's so much more rewarding, at least to me. You guys are shaking your heads. Yes.
Yeah,
Same.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things we don't talk about when we talk about authenticity is that it's stepping into rejection. Because as
Mm,
soon as you decide to be genuinely who you are no longer capable of being a match for everyone, even though you really aren't to begin with. We can fool ourselves into being
yeah.
like, okay, I can be what this person needs if I do this, this, and this. Right. And so there's at least the hope. And then you jump through the hoops to try to be everything to everyone. There's at least the hope of that. And that keeps us pushing. When you're like, here's who I am authentically. I'm going to live in the way that is in harmony with that, which means you're not for me, you're not for me, you're not for me. They'll know that and reject you, and you'll know that about other people. And if you're going to be authentic, you need to reject them. And of course, like saying no is like everybody, I'm allergic to it. Like it's so
Yeah.
hard to do. I can't help you. I'm not the best person to help you. If I can refer to somebody, there's helping, right? Like, oh, here's the right person for you. But you get into this. I mean, if it was easy to be authentic, we would all be authentic all the time, right? There's a reason why we're having pep talks about be your authentic self, because it sucks. Rejection totally sucks. And if you are going to be who you are, you're going to have to step into that world of rejection. And there are beautiful ways to do it and generous ways to do it and all of that, but it will never take away the little bit of ick in there
Mhm.
that just lives there, especially when you find the right matches and you know how beautiful something can be. And
Yeah.
you run into this and you have to have the ick instead, even though in the long term it's better. In that short term, that lizard brain is like, no, just fake it, be something else, do something
Yeah,
else, right? And we
exactly
really
right.
have to build the muscle of courage to sit there with that difficult
Mhm.
conversation or just the unpleasant emotions of having to say, we're not for each other anymore, or we're not for each other to begin with.
I love that point, Heather. So true.
Heather, have you ever uh, informed a prospect that you did not want to work with them?
Yes, I have said, I don't think we're a match. I
Okay.
find that I do a much better job if I have somewhere to send them to, or some nugget of like, here, it's not like, oftentimes you just don't want to leave somebody without a next step, right? So
Right.
I will do a better job of saying, I don't think we're a match. And I've had people say that to me as well. This is why I know how unpleasant it is. But
Mhm.
I find that I will say no if I can say, but here's a place to go look.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So again, part of our power is our network. It isn't just what's up here. It's not
Right.
our process. It's our network. Because again, I had that situation earlier this week. All last weekend, I wrestled with this decision. And on Monday morning, I sent this guy a letter saying, listen, I just don't feel this is right for either of us at this moment. I don't think that what I do, you're ready for what I do. And I said, I think part of the issue is around your mindset and some of the thinking you're bringing into this situation. And he emailed me, Reverend, thank you so much. You nailed it. That's my issue. I said, I don't deal with that. I have people that deal with that. I'd be happy to refer you. And then he said something. He said, well, I have a friend that does that. I'm going to talk to him. And I said, don't do business with friends. Don't do that. You need somebody objective, right? So, but that's okay. I didn't say that. But what I did do is I sent him a couple links to people that I know that do that kind of work and said, hey, here's some resources you may want to look at, right? And again, it's having the authenticity, Heather, of saying, I'm going to serve this person by not working with them. I'm going to serve this person by putting them in touch with somebody that can really help them.
Yeah.
And I tell people that all the time. I said to somebody the other day, stop doing my job. I said to him, I said, what are you talking about? I said, you just told me that you met a guy and you spent an hour trying to help him solve his career problem. You sell insurance. What the hell were you doing that for? That's my job. You're supposed to refer him to me. I'm not going to sit there and tell somebody to buy whole life versus term. That's your job.
I think another thing for me, rejection, Heather, is such a good word. Another way I describe it that I think I've gotten a lot better at is I don't get my feelings hurt anymore. And I used to think it's such a, I'm looking out at Lake Washington and the old line about, it's a numbers game. If you put 12 fishing poles in the water, you got a better chance of catching a fish than if you have one pole. So, but I've tried to learn to detach from the outcome in certain things. And I'm thinking of a woman I met on a match networking call a couple of months ago. And anyway, and I'm so glad I met you. And we did the breakout room. So we had a separate Zoom and she told me all this personal stuff. And I said, you know what? I just feel like you and your husband could use a couple of gratitude journals. And so I'm going to send them to you. So I sent them to her, signed them and all that sort of stuff. And I said, just because I think it'll help you. And again, go giving, making it about them. And she says, well, what can I possibly do for you? And I says, well, I'll tell you, the big thing for me, I'm always looking for speaking gigs, anything, speaking, coaching clients, people that want to hear about gratitude, whatever. So she said, well, I'm going to do that. So I said, great. And so she emailed me back or something. So I emailed her about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks later, and hey, you want to circle back and kind of catch up and things like that. Nothing. About 2 or 3 weeks later, I sent another thing. Hey, blank person's name. Do you want to grab a Zoom this week or something? Nothing. And I just thought, wow, I got ghosted. And I felt that I did more than I needed, and I don't like the word should, but could have done. And I just have tried to detach from the emotion that goes with that and not worry about it. And that's why I think just, it sounds so crude, but throwing it at the wall and see what sticks, or it's a numbers game. I just think a lot of it's still that.
David, in 2010, anyway, I'm at this meeting, right? And I gave a talk, and there was a guy in the audience that I'd known for a long time. And he stood up and he said, that man there changed my life in 2010. I had spent time with him. He did not give me money to hire me, but somehow, some way I helped him. And he stood up and gave a testimonial. And I guarantee you, 1 or 2 people in those audience will eventually do business with me based on him saying that. So the idea is, if we do things with the intention of getting something back, I think that's the wrong intention.
Yeah.
Right. It took me a long time to live that in my life, but it's
so good.
I believe it's true.
I even mentioned the same thing, and I got to make sure I practice what I preach. Like I always tell clients, every single day I write in that gratitude journal. I can't stand in front of a group and say, this can really help you, but I just write occasionally. So I've got to be able to walk the walk. But I think it's so interesting because one of the things I'll say is, you want to help yourself, help other people. And it's amazing how well that can, and just to always remember that and let go of the conclusion or let go of the result sometimes, because it's not always going to be what you think. At least that's helpful.
Working in a nonprofit organization, volunteering, that helps. Because then you're really giving your time. It goes back to what you said. The greatest gift you can give is yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the example of that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I had a conversation last week with someone who she was interested in hiring me. She got referred to me. We had a couple of amazing conversations, an actual coaching call. and she asked to have the sales conversation, which I love. I love when somebody asks that. And through that conversation, through asking her the questions to see if she was ready to work with me, she says, oh, well, I have a business coach and I hired her a couple months ago and it was $20,000. And she didn't ask me any of these questions. And we're not working on any of those things that you mentioned. I said, well, I'm going to stop this conversation right here and right now, that if you already have a business coach, you don't need something else. You don't need a life and a business coach over here unless you're not happy with what you're getting there. And she's like, well, I need all the things that you mentioned and need all the things that you talked about. I said, then you have to decide if you're not getting those things that you need from where you're at, but I'm not willing to work with somebody who's working with someone else and have conflicting information, because it's just going to confuse you. It's just going to either give you too much work or have you two different directions. And I walked away from that conversation thinking, just lost that client. Like I could have easily still taken, but it wasn't the best thing for her. And it would have been frustrating for me in the long run, right? A week goes by and she emailed me and she said, I'm in the process of breaking up with who I hired. I'll be in touch. That's kind of cool.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's wrap up Go Giver. Any takeaways, any insights, any action steps that you're going to take after this discussion?
I'm emailing you guys right now what I said I'd give you right now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
How about you, David? Any action steps, takeaways from today? Reaffirming.
Yeah, I just think it's the biggest takeaway I have is more of the same, and just really understanding the principle and putting it into play every single day. And I notice in my particular world, I mean, this is just me. You could be the same way or different. There's just certain days it works and certain days it doesn't. And most of the days it works, but on the days it doesn't, just move on and do other things. But on the days it does, really maximize out. And that outreach thing of reaching as many people as you can, to me, kind of reminds me of the fishing poles again. Just reach out to a lot of people, because, it's, there's some line that goes around that you can't get 100% of the people you don't call, or something like that. But so just to do more of the same, just and really, that what's helped me a lot is to detach from the outcome. Is I just have, because sometimes it's too much. It got tied too much to my self-worth. Well, maybe I'm not so good after all, and you just don't want to do that. And that's why one of the things I love so much about gratitude is it helps you so much with that relationship you have with the person in the mirror. And the stronger that is, the better your whole life works.
Great,
So
great
true.
wisdom. Great wisdom.
Thank you.
How about you, Heather?
Yeah, for me, I'm on a campaign as just to make sure my bucket's full so that I'm giving out of generosity. I really just too many challenges at once. Thanks, COVID. And there's so much of that default setting where it's like time to give and I just want to cry. So it's like more time, I'm meditating twice a day now. I have just all these
Nice.
habits and things set up, but I have to operationalize it because my default setting is quite a heavy pull. And I love giving. There's, even when it's at those times that I feel that it's draining me, there's still the lure, right? It's still there. So I'm really trying to, I know we're talking about giving, but I'm putting myself first, to hit that baseline of I have enough, because then my giving becomes a source of joy and rebounds that, sometimes when you're empty, giving can actually fill the bucket. It just depends on that type of giving. So I want to get really savvy on the nuance between the two times where this is filling my bucket and this is okay. And this is where this is sacrifice as opposed to generosity.
Heather, that term, filling your bucket, that's a Gallup term. Are you using in that context?
I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't know
there's
what that is.
Gallup organization, there's a book called Fill Your Bucket First.
Mm.
And that's what you're doing. You said, I have to fill my bucket before I can fill somebody else's bucket
Right.
to do it.
But it's super tricky because sometimes doing for others does fill my bucket, right? Like you have to get like good at figuring out which is which, right? So if I can tune into my body and tune into my energy level and tune into, am I procrastinating this or not? You know, I can get some of those signals. But sometimes I show up to a session with my community and I'm like, thank goodness, because I felt like crap before this. Like they filled my bucket, but it was reciprocal and all of that. So there's we want things to be easy. We want to hit a button, have a one single answer. And I'm finding that that's not my life. My life is really observe and work on self-awareness and pick up on the nuances, but they're all coming from my body. And so I'm really trying to get good at tuning into that. And maybe that will be my easy button once I've figured that one out. But
well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Hey, David, I want to go back to your fishing poles in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're fishing in the wrong part of the lake, dude.
Well, that's the term that people use a lot. Like, are you in the right rooms? Are you talking to the right ecologies? All that. Yeah, it's a good point. And it's, just
that's why people need us, because we can tell them where to go in the lake where they'll catch the most fish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, good point.
Yeah.
And I'll leave you with.
Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, lady? Come on. What am I going to do?
I'm going to get better at receiving.
There you go.
So for me, that's been a struggle for a long time, asking for help. Charley, you're one of the first people that I reached out to as I was expanding my business and what I wanted to do. And I said, I need help. I need help seeing what this looks like.
And Heather, she was scared to death to open her mouth. I'm telling you.
Not to open my mouth, to ask for help.
Well, that's my point. Yeah, to ask for it, but I saw it in her a year ago, her potential to become what she's becoming today, but she had to act on it.
Yeah.
She wasn't ready. She wasn't ready
to receive the help. And it's had a ripple effect. Like, so by being willing to receive when I asked for it, I've received a couple things within the past couple months that I didn't ask for, that I didn't know I needed, that just kind of showed up. Right. Well, that's amazing. So for me, that's the message. Be okay with receiving.
Cool. Yeah, that's a big thing that I have with my wife is where I offer to do something for her, she said, no, you don't have to do that. That's okay. I said, allow me to help you. Allow me to give you a gift of my time. Yeah. And they push back this, I don't want to inconvenience you, et cetera, et cetera. And I see human beings do that so often. I want to give you something to say thank you for what you did for me, and to deny me that. It doesn't help our relationship.
I love some seminar I was in once. They said, oh yeah, you need to tell her that she's denying you the feeling of feeling good about helping her, and she's robbing you of that feeling by never letting you help her or whatever, which I always thought was pretty powerful.
Yeah,
I find it to be a power dynamic. If you're the helper, you're here. The other person's there. If you want to switch that I want to be in control of everything. I'm a control freak. I make every one of my relationships with me here. I'm the giver, right? And everybody else is the receiver and dependent on me. If I flip that, my lizard brain goes nuts. So I've been practicing, but I get that whole like that sometimes is part of no. I'm not going to ask for things. I'm in charge and I'm the control person. So it's always tricky.
Well, listen, if you had a close up of David and I, you'd see wrinkles, and those wrinkles mean wisdom. So you're getting your wisdom, Heather.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you all. You have a great weekend.